Chers amis, bonjour à toutes et à tous, encore une fois.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you very much for being present at this closing ceremony. At the end of this Congress, and we are reaching the end of the Congress. We have lived extraordinary moments of solidarity and exchange which open up perspectives and which make us harbor hope, a lot of perspective and many combats altogether. Before entering into the closing ceremony, let's listen to all the pledges that we could not listen to during the inauguration. We're talking about fundamental stakeholders because of the role they play as partners in the fight against enforced disappearances. We're talking about people and agencies who are acting as an interface between civil society and institutions. We have the pleasure of welcoming two human rights associations, and we're going to give the floor to the International Human Rights Commission of Gambia with Emmanuel Diouf, who is the chair of the National Human Rights Commission at Gambia. Emmanuel Diouf, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is really with profound honor that I stand here to address this distinguished gathering on this first World Conference on Enforced Disappearance. I hope you'll agree with me that this forum represents a pivotal opportunity to confront a deeply troubling human rights issue that continues to haunt countries and countless families worldwide. On behalf of the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia, I express my gratitude for this invitation and reaffirm our unwavering commitment to addressing enforced disappearances, promoting reconciliation, and ensuring justice in our respective countries. The National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia plays a pivotal role in addressing enforced disappearances within the transitional justice processes in our country. The NHRC of the Gambia is a statutory body that was mandated to promote and protect human rights, and it has been instrumental in advocating for accountability and justice for victims of human rights violation, including victims and victim families of enforced disappearances. In the Gambia, the NHRC is also the body that has been mandated to monitor the implementation of the recommendations of the Truth Commission and to report yearly to the National Assembly on the status of implementation of the recommendations by the government. By this mandate, the NHRC has been actively monitoring the implementation of the Truth Commission, particularly those addressing enforced disappearances. The Commission advocates for the establishment of accountability mechanisms such as special investigative units and judicial processes to ensure that perpetrators are held responsible while safeguarding the rights of victims and witnesses. Furthermore, the NHRC supports measures aimed at restoring the dignity of victims, including public acknowledgements, exhumation and identification of remains, and psychosocial support for affected families. Through advocacy and technical assistance, the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia collaborates with state institutions to strengthen legal and institutional frameworks that criminalizes and prevent enforced disappearances, ensuring alignment with international human rights standards. In conclusion, and looking ahead, the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia remains committed to sustaining its role as a watchdog and facilitator of justice in addressing enforced disappearances. It will continue engaging with government, civil society, and international partners to ensure that victims' rights are prioritized and that the Truth Commission recommendations are fully implemented. by conducting awareness campaign, providing legal and policy advice, and monitoring compliance with human rights obligations, the National Human Rights Commission aims to foster a culture of accountability and respect. I thank you all for listening.
Merci, merci beaucoup, monsieur. J'aimerais maintenant appeler Madame Amina Bouayache.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Amina Bouayache, President of the National Human Rights Council of Morocco.
Monsieur le Président, marhaba. J'ai le plaisir, donc,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Marhaba. I have the pleasure, on behalf of the CNDH, National Human Rights Council of Morocco, to address you. A Commission for Truth was created in 2023 in order to eradicate the enforced disappearances and violations of human rights. The Commission was the committee received the mandate to implement the 5 commitments. The 5 pledges is to have a multidimensional approach in order to make sure that we implement the observations made by the Committee on Enforced Disappearances since 2004, and to advocate for the acknowledgement of the competence of the committee to examine the recommendations. Thirdly, to continue to thoroughly examine the situation of the previous victims of enforced disappearances through DNA testing, some of which have been conducted in collaboration with the families and with the laboratory of the National Security Department. Fourthly, ensure the legal prosecution and criminalization of this crime as foreseen by the Constitution of 2011 in Morocco, and to foster the standardization of the criminal code. And then fifth, to preserve historic memory through the digitization of the archives of the conciliation claims and to hand them over to Morocco. To create a space for documentation regarding enforced disappearances at the CNDH. And thirdly, the rehabilitation of irregular detention centers in collaboration with the organizations and the bringing up of burial sites. The CNDH has launched measures in order to support the academia and the universities to study the recent history, and then the publication of the life stories of the victims of enforced disappearances, to lend support the activities aimed at promoting collective memory, including enforced disappearances. The CNDH urges for the universal ratification of the Convention so that this first Congress becomes a hub for the promotion of the universal common ground against enforced disappearances and torture. Thank you very much for these pledges on behalf of the CNDH, and the same message is sent to the states. We need to alert other human rights institutions to be part of this movement against enforced disappearances.
Here we go again. No. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, the first World Congress on Enforced Disappearances has brought us all together, united by a common goal, the global fight against enforced disappearance. Everything that has been shared since yesterday, the many powerful testimonies, experiences shared by all actors, have made its wide scope, profound impact, and the reasons why we are here very clear. the need to find concerted solutions together. It has been an intense couple of days filled with many exchanges, much learning and sharing, and crucially, commitment from all actors to take action. It is truly heartwarming to see so many participants coming together and joining forces to end this serious human rights violations. Hundreds of participants coming from 120 countries. I think we are all blown away by the turnout, so thank you. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that this event marks a milestone in the decades-long fight against enforced disappearance. So many, many thanks to all of you. Quelques mots en français.
And now in French.
Je tiens à remercier mes formidables
I would like to thank
qui n'ont pas aménagé leurs efforts.
heartfully my dear, true companions and colleagues who were capable of executing tremendous effort, who were working 3 days in one, in charge of the housekeeping issues and all the logistics. I would like to thank them. Nordine Dressi, who has coordinated the academic program. Janice Berger, who helped us in everything, basically with everything, multitasking collaborator, and Tatiana, who was loyal to us from the get-go, and she has been in charge of these social networks and the website. And I would also like to thank the members of the Office of the Initiative, the Committee on Enforced Disappearances, as organizing committee in collaboration with the High Commissioner of the United Nations, the Committee on Enforced Disappearances and the Task Force on Enforced Disappearances. We would like to pay tribute to all the victims in the world who always need to be placed at the core of each and every one of our actions and all our endeavors. And we're thinking, our thoughts go to the people who are not physically present but who are here with us. We would like to thank to everyone contributing in one way or another to this event, this unprecedented event, which is a result of great teamwork. We are fully grateful to all the participants that have moved to Geneva to combat the cold, or who have followed us online. We would also like to thank all our sponsors who show the interest that they have towards this noble cause that deserves all our attention. We would also like to thank the team of interpreters, our only private partner, and we would also like to thank them. And we would like to thank everyone that has contributed to this event, the technicians and all the families and all the victims that have shared their perspectives and their experiences. We would also like to thank all the participants and who are at the forefront of this fight against enforced disappearances. Thank you. It has been a huge honor for all of us.
Switching back to English. As the first World Congress on Enforced Disappearances comes to an end, we look ahead with hope and determination. Hope that the same multi-actor, collaborative spirit that has led us here will also preside over the next chapter. And determined to carry forward the momentum we have created together, starting tomorrow. Thanks to the support of partners, we are very excited to reveal key actions identified during the pre-Congress consultations with all stakeholders. And we hope that what we are about to present will inspire more people and more actors to join us in this collective endeavor. Before we reveal these key actions, a couple of reminders, if I may. You are all invited to fill out the survey to share your feedback on the event. It will be in your inbox by 5 p.m. today. And for those whose travel was arranged by us, please send a photo of your boarding pass to Ramla today or 48 hours prior to your return flight. You know she will chase you if you don't. And now the time has come to unveil the outcome of the workshop on regional roadmaps and the selection of key initiatives. And to guide us through this exciting session, it is my great pleasure to welcome two members of our advisory board, Professor Grażyna BARANOWSKA, Vice Chair of the United Nations Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, and Mr. Saad HUSSEIN. Where is Saad? We've lost him? Yeah, all the way up. Please come down. Who is Chairman of the Board of Directors of Initiators Organizations for Human Rights and Democracy. Many thanks again to all for your contribution. We look forward to the next chapter.
Thank you so much to Claire and the whole team. We're all impressed by how well it was organized and how well we could be here. So I'm really excited to walk all of us through what will be the next 1.5 hours of thinking about what's happening after the Congress, together with my colleague Saad. Do you want to join me here? There will be two parts of today's closing ceremony. The first part is finalizing of the regional workshops. So as you might know, there was regionally discussed what's going to be happening, and we will have one person from each regional workshop presenting here some of the findings.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You can start with your section.
Okay.
Yeah.
And after that, then the action points will be made. So we will have 6 different action points, and each action point will be presented here on stage by different persons. So let's start with our exciting regional workshops, and I will invite on stage. Let me move over here to leave them space to speak. Rachid al-MANOUZI who will speak on the MENA region. He's from FEMED. Then we will have Cecille, BAELLO, a representative of FEMED, who will speak about the regional workshop from Asia. We will have María, Adela, ANTOKOLETZ, who is speak from the Latin American context, and she represents FEDEFAM and ICAED. And then from Africa, we have Hala from the SIHA network, and last not least, from the European region, we have Özlem ZINGIL. There you are. Okay, wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining me here. Every one of you, as you know, have 4 minutes for the presentation. That's very, very short, and then we will have a short summary. So do you want to sit or stand? That's up to you. Sit? Okay, so let's, sitting, yes, sitting is good, then we don't have to hand the microphone. I would propose the order of speaking, maybe how we can also go from this side.
Well, I would like to start with a thank you to the organization and as well as the regional group participations for the Europe. For the Europe region, the participants agreed to address the thematic topic of reframing needs as rights, truth, justice, reparation, memory, and psychological support. The participants discussed that the truth, justice, reparation, memory, and the psychological support are interconnected to understand and acknowledge the basic rights and needs of the families of the forcibly disappeared. Furthermore, crucial in strengthening the accountability and removing obstacles to fulfilling the state's obligations and commitments. And without these, it's not possible to advocacy. Each of these needs is a right recognized by the Convention, but more importantly, they are already enshrined in different human rights conventions and declarations. However, the implementation of these rights faces resistance from the states. It's very crucial to take a holistic approach, structure legislative frameworks, ensure the active participation of the families and civil society, and to recognize that these rights are not only the rights of the relatives, but every individual of the society. Participants address 3 recommendations and urge the states to commit reframing needs through justice, reparation, memory, and psychological support as rights, adopting a holistic approach, including the prevention of transgenerational trauma, effective implementation of the judgments, countering intimidation and reprisals. In doing so, actively involve the families and the society in each stage. Also urge the international organizations to make states to establish structured framework for the families of the forcibly missed, including but not limited to providing information, collecting DNA reference samples for identification, and offering legal and financial support. Finally, urge states and the international organizations to support the international human rights mechanisms and NGOs financially to monitor the states and ensure the protection of the NGOs and those who work on enforced disappearances.
Thank you. Let's
Tout d'abord, nos remerciements
I would like to thank the organizers and the team that has worked for the success of this World Congress, this first World Congress on enforced disappearances. All of this will allow us to place the matter of enforced disappearance among the hot topics of this decade. The North of Africa and the Middle East have talked about the topics proposed to us for our debates, and we have agreed upon considering that the juridical aspect is a central topic, the creation of the crime of enforced disappearance. This is a key topic in this area. First of all, at a national level, we have to use all means available to stop this phenomenon of enforced disappearance. Law needs to be passed and enforced. The associations of families of the missing need more support in the different areas. First, the methodology of documenting cases of enforced disappearance and the submission of proof. Secondly, psychological and psychosocial support. For that, financial resources and material resources are necessary. Third, reparation. In this sense, we need to take care of the families and the victims, to be responsible for them. Fourth, identification of remains. States need to provide the necessary competences and means so that an effective task is carried out vis-à-vis forensic medicine. All of these aspects, all of these actions need to help us criminalize enforced disappearance and stop impunity. These will stop these crimes from happening in the future. This is a task that needs to be carried out with the participation and the agreement of all affected parties, the families of the disappeared and civil society. Thank you very much to everyone who has helped us in this struggle, a struggle that is not yet over, the struggle to criminalize enforced disappearance, and we need to fight this fight so that this situation does not repeat itself.
Thank you. I am Cecille BAELLO from the Families of Victims of Involuntary Disappearance FIND in the Philippines, and it is my pleasure to be here and present to you all the regional priority actions we have discussed for the Asia Group. We have identified one priority theme out of all that have been gathered from the consultations, which is the proposal for the protection of families of enforced disappearance, as well as human rights defenders and witnesses of cases of enforced disappearance. We chose this theme because we saw this as the overarching theme that covers the various needs of countries in the region, including the need for the empowerment of families, need for reparation, legislations on enforced disappearance, and as well as the need for the popularization of the Convention Against Enforced Disappearance. Further, we saw this theme having the potential of also covering not just regional contexts, but also global ones. To do this, we have identified 3 main action points. First, the development of a repository of cases, statistics, stories and narratives, and case studies in the regions that show the trends and patterns of enforced disappearance in the region, which would also emphasize the various dimensions of the crime, including gender, economic, cultural factors, and others that are all in intersection with one another. This repository would serve as a source to be shared within the region and to be accessed beyond. Second is the need for engagement with politicians, the parliament, ministers, president, legislators, and other relevant political actors through dialogues, meetings, and other concrete spaces for the exchange of ideas and recommendations to address enforced disappearance with the presence of civil society organizations, families of enforced disappearance, and other relevant organizations. Lastly, the third is the development of a set of accountability indicators to measure the compliance of states to United Nations human rights instruments and mechanisms to heighten regional initiatives that will be anchored on demanding the accountability of perpetrators by bridging victims towards possible channels to access justice with the coordination of civil society organizations, families, and other relevant bodies. This would also be hand in hand with the holding of periodic multi-stakeholder congresses on enforced disappearance in the regions. There's a lot to be done and more to be talked about in more open spaces of exchanges, but hopefully for now, with this Congress, we could start with this. Thank you so much.
The Latin American group has met this morning, and we thought that we need to work attempting to disseminate knowledge about the convention, not only in academic and intellectual spheres, but also for people on the street, for the people. Most of the population in many of our countries has no idea that there is such a convention and that it belongs to all of us, that it's not something that's far removed, it's something that allows us to work better, and that can mean that in the courts will remember it. The court will remember that the country signed this document. And they have to commit to the decisions made at a state level. So we have decided to propose here in this World Congress the creation, and these are our proposals, the creation of a Latin American network against enforced disappearances, an open network open to the participation of victims organizations and survivors organizations of Latin America, organizations that are support groups that accompany them, and also specialists. It will be an articulation of solidary, multidisciplinary, intergenerational actions. I must say that our group was beautiful. It was made up of elderly people and also young people. It was like a symbol of what we want. And this group will meet online We will meet via Zoom every 3 months, and we will do so. The first meeting of this group will take place on the 26th of February at 10 a.m. Mexico time, 11 a.m. Bogota time, 1 p.m. Buenos Aires time. The first action of this group, of this interdisciplinary Latin American group, will be with the occasion of the Argentinian 24th of March, because we have decided that our great actions of this year will be connected to significant dates of different countries, or at least regions. And so we will be focusing on the backslide in our countries in Salvador, because Monsignor Romero was murdered on the 24th of March of 1980. The second action will be on May 10th. On Mexico, we will focus as much as possible on Mexico on that session. The third action will be on the 30th of August, International Day of the Detained and the Missing, trying to work with all of Latin America. And we were thinking of a fourth action, which was suggested in the Latin American meeting last Tuesday, a regional meeting at the beginning of October. The network will also foster the exchange of experiences on regional problems. For example, the roles of women searchers, the disappearance of migrants, protection of defenders of human rights and journalists, access to justice, memory, etc. And we will be disseminating opportunities for participation. We will foster the participation of the members of the network in international human rights organizations, taking into account the timings and formality needed. We will use the database used for the Latin American meeting. That network will be used, and we will try to have communication not only amongst ourselves, but also with large organizations that face similar problems such as FEDEFAM, or the recently created Latin American network of lawyers in the matter of human rights. No one, if there's no external interference, we will all pool our efforts. I went over time, sorry, yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hala, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Africa Working Group. Considering the fact that the knowledge and awareness of the, the international mechanisms around enforced disappearance has been extremely limited and unknown across the continent, we have decided that as a group, maybe at this point, we focus on primarily awareness building. And this is something that we can commit to as a member of civil society at this point. We also discussed that, if we are to establish, which we believe it's very critical and important, a network around enforced disappearance, this matter should be taken to the African Commission, which is, it brings a large number of civil society from across the continent, and Africa is a huge continent, and within the Commission, you will have a civil society from Western Africa, Southern Africa, or Eastern Africa, and North Africa, and can discuss how do they want to approach the establishment of the network. But for the time being, we saw the awareness building, it's going to be very, very critical and important, considering, the challenges that we are currently confronted with across the continent. So our recommendation is to strengthen the capacities and capabilities of civil society across the continent on the issue of enforced disappearances, and authorities and victims, as well as the media, including emphasizing the challenges of enforced disappearances of women across the continent. And this is a subject that we have discussed, that the conversations around women, it always position women as mobilizers on behalf of those who are enforced disappeared, but there is no emphasis on women themselves being victims of enforced disappearances. And I have recalled my own experience, working on this issue, that negotiation on behalf of women, or stressing the fact that they have been enforced disappeared, it remains very, very, very limited, and they simply vanish as if they did not exist. We also talked about the importance of the ratifications by the states, very, very important, and the inclusion of the of the mechanisms into the national legislations as part of the advocacy campaign. We have discussed the necessity of developing, an adaptable guide, that could be in text or a broadcast and translated into local languages across the continent. And we propose, as a small group of civil society, that we can come up with a slogan for all Africa against enforced disappearance. And and we have agreed that this discussion is going to be reflected among our own networks in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much for all of you. I would now invite on scene someone who will summarize your work. So let's give them a clap again. We're thanking them for their work and their regions. And I would invite Mandira SHARMA to come here, and she has the very difficult task of summarizing in 2 minutes, bringing out some of the key points together from those important comments that we have heard here. So that's a really challenging task, Mandira. I'm looking forward to hearing that. She is from the, you can come here, then you're well seen. She represents the ICJ and was one of the co-moderators of the workshops. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think at the outset, let me state that I will not dare to summarize the enriching discussions we just had, but perhaps I would like to share some of the common threads that was presented among all the region and regional discussions that we had in the morning. So out of those dozens of issues that were identified as priorities in online regional consultations that we had last year, the workshop to develop a regional roadmap was held this morning that brought 40 participants covering 40 different organizations, including victims associations, regional federations. All 5 regions were covered. Very lively discussions, very intense discussions, very enriching discussions that we had in the morning. You just heard the priorities that each group had identified, and it was not that easy to reach out or come to that sort of consensus to identify one priority areas out of those dozens of issues that were emerged during the discussions. You just heard very enriching discussions. That's why I'm saying that I will not dare to summarize that, but some of the common threads that we identified are like group identifying, even within the regions, there are different experiences, different political, social context that has to be taken into considerations in identifying some of the priorities and actions while we implement our initiatives at national level. So protection of human rights defenders, victims, witnesses, and civil society society organizations was one of the themes that came quite a lot in the discussions. Providing psychosocial support, legal framework, having those rights or those protections protected in the legal framework was also very important. Strengthening civil society organizations, victims associations, not only by providing financial resources, but political support was also discussed as a priority as well. They also identified the need to have new generations of people into this work. Having new generations also means bringing new technologies, new strategies, and that was discussed in the group as adding value to the existing work of several organizations and federations in the regions. Strengthening existing and creating new platforms were also discussed to share learning, not only to share best practices, but also to learn from the challenges and dilemmas that we face at national level and regional levels. It also could help as the depository of knowledge and resource that could be accessible to victims and civil society organizations and communities at large. So at the end, most of the groups were also discussing about need of legal frameworks, not only to criminalize enforced disappearances, promote accountability, but also to protect the rights of victims and make victims' rights accessible for victims at large. So at the end, forging collaborations, engaging with supportive governments, entities, and also national human rights institutions and victims associations was also identified as one of the common threads. I would stop here. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for all the groups that were presenting here their priority areas. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for explaining to us and showing the common threads that really run across all of the regional teams. So we are now moving to the second part of the closing ceremony. That is the part where we will be presenting, or where action points will be presented. As we said in the beginning, there are 6 action points that will be presented today. And the first one is, as you hopefully can already see, support the creation of a regional victim-led network in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's really my honor to welcome here Eduardo Diallo, who's going to present this action point for us. Welcome on the stage.
Okay. Merci à l'ensemble des organisateurs de ce premier congrès.
I would like to thank the organizers of this First World Congress, which has been successful. It's worth mentioning that I address you with a great emotion. I feel thrilled to be able to convey an African message to all of you, because this is a recommendation, a main recommendation that we have identified in our working group, and this recommendation has to do with launching an urge, a common claim on the need to create a regional victim-led network in sub-Saharan Africa against enforced disappearances. Why do we need this network? Well, because it's going to help us fill in a gap. And secondly, this network is going to allow us to reinforce the spirit of the collective voice. In an isolated country of Africa, we will never be able to have a common impact, but together with the rest, we will have more power and our voices will be carried further. And this network is going to reinforce the visibility of our actions, because enforced disappearances that we are recording, that we're suffering in sub-Saharan Africa, remain unperceived, invisible, and this cannot be. And the third advantage to be reaped by the creation of this network is that it's going to allow us to reinforce the capabilities and the capacity of the local stakeholders. And in terms of monitoring of enforced disappearances, this is going to be helpful also in order to issue a claim and also in order to foster the quest for truth. These elements are of the utmost importance and justify the creation of this network, because this network is going to allow us to intensify our collaboration with the rest of the national and international associations and institutions, and will also foster the sharing of best practices. It's important to share good practices. Some organizations like the Latin American Federation is going to have a positive impact in the global fight against enforced disappearances. All of these are important elements that allow us to advocate for the creation of this network. As a result of this event, we would like to have grown. As long as a family is unrepresented, without answers, as long as there is injustice in the world, we need to continue our fight.
Thank you very much. And now we have the honor to have Commissioner Saad, who will comment on the action points.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice. Mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais dire un grand bravo. Mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais commencer par dire un grand bravo aux organisateurs de ce premier congrès mondial contre les disparitions forcées. L'heure du bilan viendra plus tard, mais nous pouvons d'ores et déjà exprimer une satisfaction.
I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event. I would like to thank the organizers and to tell them bravo. From now onwards, we can express our satisfaction seeing the level of participation at this Congress, but also seeing the quality of the interactions that we have kept around the problems that have to do with enforced disappearances. And I am not here today to hold a speech. I have been asked to comment or that I react regarding this point of action on the creation of a regional victim-led network in sub-Saharan Africa. And allow me to say that as chair of the working group on enforced disappearances, I am committed to accompany the creation of this network and to lend as much support as possible. I'm not going to repeat all the advantages to be reaped by the creation of this network. Mr. Diallo has already mentioned them and how inspirational this is. The Latin American network, which has a global outreach, and this association today has a statute of observer at the UN. We would like to have an identical organization in Africa, so I fully endorse this initiative. Once more, we're going to do everything necessary so that this network that is going to be created also achieves the status of observer at the UN.
Thank you for introducing and commenting on action point 1. And that brings us to action point 2. And already in the regional consultation, we've heard that women are really an important part of that. So it's only fitting that action point 2 is organization of annual meetings of women searchers. And let me invite to the scene Yolanda Moran, who will introduce the action point. Want to sit down? Okay.
I would like to thank the organizations and everyone investing time, resources, but especially a lot of heart to this. All of this so that this First World Congress could be conducted. We acknowledge and cherish all their effort so that this space could become a space for trust, sharing and hope for all of us. During these 2 days, just like our fight from the onset of the disappearance of our relatives, we could have seen, experience, and live what union and force means when we are acting jointly, when voices are brought together in order to claim our rights. This voice is carried out stronger, further away, and for a longer period of time. In spite of the language differences, ages, genders, ideologies, years of experience and background, we have met and we have understood one another with a universal language of love, that which moves us and keeps us in the fight to find our dear, beloved, disappeared ones. The building up of tools, laws, and justice processes is a wide road full of difficulty with a great incline and entailing the weight of looking for each and every one of them, because each one of those lives matter. Each one of them are awaited, hoped for, and called upon beings. It's thanks to them that we are capable of digging with our own bare hands, digging with 45 degrees of temperature in the desert, walking great distances, and even putting our own lives at stake. It's because of them, and it's because we feel that it's our obligation. Because if it's not us, if we don't look for them, no one else is going to do that. Authorities place a bet on our oblivion and death in order not to continue our search. How did we reach this point of lack of humanization in the world? The losing of faith and hope is something that happens day after day after day. This Congress, getting to know you, getting to feel that connection that only one person who has felt the disappearance of a loved one can understand, has led me to harbor more hope, to see so many associations, experts, and solidarity people trying to look for people that they don't even know, is what renews my stir. It's what renews my faith in humankind. I am faithful that streamlining joint strategies and international networks can be part of the situation, can be part of the solution. Imagine the earthquake that we can generate if we bring together our voices in order to claim our needs. How many wills could we stir if we were to find ourselves walking at the same time towards the same direction? Let's make the effort to work together to fight for an effective search for truth, justice, memory, and redress and reparation for all. Let's be generators of peace, but of answers, just like at the beginning of our fights. Governments can come and go. The only thing that prevails and pervades over time is the people, the need for justice and peace and love for our families. That will prevail. Let's commit, Mexico, Latin America. Let's commit to meet every year personally, face to face, so that we can share, plan, and organize ourselves. Let's become a community that relies on one another, working jointly, hand in hand, towards all the directions. Let's not stand by and watch and wait for authorities to take a step forward to do the right thing. Let's begin today, because what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Now. It is indispensable. The presentation with life and punishment to the culprits. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would invite on the stage for a comment on Action 2, Ms. Silvia Plana Subirana from the International Catalan Institute for Peace.
Hola, muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. It's always a challenge to speak after Yolanda because it's a privilege to be able to complement and to add to what she was saying, but it's part of what we wanted to share with you. First and foremost, I would like to thank on behalf of the BICIP to the organizers and the convening organizations for making us participate in these activities. Thank you for this space and congratulations to all of us present here. And I think that we can congratulate ourselves for the effort to guarantee that families and victims have been at the core of the agenda during these 2 days worth of Congress. We would like to join our voices regarding the importance of holding meetings of women searchers, knowing that for the sake of the future, it's essential to add joint efforts to foster connection and exchange between searchers and to increase the outreach. At the Catalan Institute for Peace, together with Sanina Puig, my colleague, we have been for a while boosting reflections on how the search of the missing persons is strongly linked to the building of peace and how it's important to contribute to the acknowledgement of the women searchers, their political agency and their work. So we consider that in order to build peace, and we have been talking about this for these 2 days, to have an active participation of the people that have been impacted by enforced disappearances and conflict. And to that end, it's essential to build networks and spaces that strengthen the relation between women searchers, that allow them to exchange views and foster connections and interdependencies that foster the building of resilience and which allow us to foster creative solutions altogether. Together, women searchers, with all the moral and symbolic burden, have been capable of shaping up the strategic networks for the building of peace, and they were capable of basing their essence, and this was mentioned by Yolanda and by Nasser yesterday, relying on love, the lives and the memory of the loved ones. And at the SIP, we have a small experience that we would like to share, which is the fact that at the end of 2023, we conducted meetings with women searchers, and we had the participation of experts and public institutions and the United Nations, especially with headquarters in Catalonia. And it was a space which was really enriching and which we believe can be replicated, because at that meeting, we wanted to highlight the contributions of the collective groups, and where all female searchers would have the opportunity to share their experiences, the contexts in which they conduct their searchers, how do they articulate their claims and priorities. We also had the space to offer psychosocial and care spaces, and they shared their inspiring and successful stories so that they could become an example for the colleagues. And that meeting, that gathering, was thought as a more calm, medium-term and long-term process. And we're really happy because most of the women that were part of this event have been accompanying us throughout this Congress. So we're planting the seeds towards the future. What we thought really important to share was that there were intangible meetings, like the meeting between peers, the acknowledgement from one person to the other, this acknowledgement of their work, and it was important, that kind of reinforcement. And it was important to build collectively with women the agenda for these days so that it would respond to their needs and priorities. And at the same time, and we wanted to mention that, to leave space for creativity and improvisation, because truly we left a space for being, for dancing, and we knew that this calm space would allow us to see how women that wouldn't even share the same language could meet together, understand one another, and truly reinforce one another through their experiences, through the pain suffered, but also through the love that steers their path. And we wanted to support and salute this action point of the organization of annual meetings of women searchers and regional networks led by victims, because we believe it's essential in order to put the victims at the center, and to adopt the gender perspective is also essential, because as we have mentioned, we need to acknowledge the differentiated impact of disappearances in women and searchers. So as public institutions and civil society, we have to learn a lot from women searchers collectives, how they have associated and organized their work for generations, and at our organization we want to continue to lend support so that women searchers can get together. And we would like to invite everyone here to join the efforts so that we can continue to work together towards a fairer and less violent world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was the second action point out of 6. So the third action point that will be introduced by Barbara Lochbihler is the monitoring of the Committee of Enforced Disappearances session. So Barbara, if I can invite you on scene to present this action point to us.
So, I'm a member of the Committee on Enforced Disappearances. We are in action twice a year. We have sessions in spring and in autumn. And this Congress here here in Geneva brought so many of you from different backgrounds and suggestions to our committee. So what will we do in our Committee on Enforced Disappearance? First, I would say, listening to all of you, and we will have the full report, the detailed report of recommendations, will enable us and give us confidence also that the work we do in our committee can have successes when we work together and have support from also outside Geneva. Now, the main task of our work is the interaction and the dialogue with the state parties. And we do this. And the second part, I would say, is that we also try to identify and develop the convention further and how to interpret and to read this. And so we do this not only with state parties. We reach out to academia, we reach out to regional organizations, we reach out to victims organizations, human rights NGOs. So I think what our pledge, if I may say so, to the committee is that we will take your recommendations or the recommendations from this World Congress, which will enrich our work in doing this, discussing with the states, but also commenting and developing further the convention. So, and we will do this, I would say, perhaps this is an action in a more systematic way as we have done so far. But we can do this only successfully if you continue to interact with the committee. That means you can follow us. I don't know if you can see this, when our sessions are, that you can read our newsletter. You can see when perhaps your country is next on the agenda to prepare for this. And also have in mind that we ask your respective governments before they come to our committee to report how they have implemented the convention, that they have to reach out at home and on the national level with you from civil societies and victims. And then again, we can only be successful that when we work together. So also we hope that the recommendations or concluding observations we in the committee develop, that they will support you when asking your government at home, now how do they implement these recommendations? So I would say that our committee will be strengthened with all the recommendations from you. We also can promise actually that we continue to seek your knowledge, your experience, that we interact with all stakeholders with a very diverse background. And please also in working together, I would also like to refer to the different manuals we have produced. A manual, for example, who helps your government and ministries how to report to our committee. This can also help civil society to follow the arguments. Please use the information we provide. And I think that is to say that there is actually no lack of information on how we work. But of course, we have to make it visible. So our sessions, the public part, they are web streamed, so you have not to be in Geneva to follow it. But if you feel not well enough to have public contributions, you can also provide us with your information in a confidential and non-public way. So I would say, I don't know if this is exciting, but we will continue to work in the committee and let's say, don't do it only in Geneva and within the United Nations, but to reach out to all regions and also to the civil society.
Thank you very much. And bringing the voice of civil society and victims to the committee is very exciting. So thank you for that action point. And let's invite to the scene Saad HUSSEIN, who is representative of ODICAR and also from the quite newly established Bangladeshi Commission of Inquiry on Enforced Disappearances. And let's hear his thought on this action plan by the committee. Okay, of course. Yeah. Do you want the microphone? This works as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. This is a very exciting moment for me to be here as a human rights activist and also a new member created by the interim government of Bangladesh, a commission of inquiry on enforced disappearances. Well, being an activist, I had a lot of experience, which is definitely bitter experiences from the families of the disappeared, the victims itself. And I understand because I have been working with the victim families, the victims of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings and torture over 16 years. And I feel their sufferings. I know their plights, their sufferings, their pains, how it is. Being a member of the commission, we have received so far more than 1,700 complaints in the commission that took place since 2009 and August 5th, 2024. After the changeover, the political changes, the regime change, you know, the Bangladesh had been under a fascist regime led by Sheikh Hasina. So the student-led movement, it turned into a mass uprising that uplifted the fascist regime, and a new interim government formed, led by Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. So after coming this government initiated this making of this commission and also ratify the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. So here comes how could we monitor the Committee on Enforced Disappearances sessions, because there are a lot of expectations from the families of the disappeared, and basically to identify the whereabouts or the fate of the disappeared persons. The Commission is mandated with identify the perpetrators, search for the victims, report to the different stakeholders, including the government, reforms the laws and make recommendations for amendment of the national laws, and also recommend for criminalizing the enforced disappearances. I think we have to make more commitments in terms of, ratification is not enough, it's just the beginning, it's just the initiative, but it is very challenging for all the states to have a proper implementation, a better implementation of the convention. So there should be a dialogue between the multi-stakeholders, including the families association, civil society, human rights defenders. And the committee needs to be proactive in terms of holding the government accountable for implementing the conventions. And how could we make the governments accountable which are reluctant to proceed further? So I think monitoring by the civil society and also by the international community, particularly the UN Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances and the Committee on Enforced Disappearance, jointly work together for keeping the commitment and ensure the victims, ensure the justice to the victims, reparation, and the guarantee of non-repetition. And also, I think it is also important to educate, sort of providing training, workshops, capacity building of the victims and the family members of the disappeared. This can also be helped in order to the way they document their cases to different organizations, including the prosecution. In Bangladesh, you may know that the International Crimes Tribunal is dealing with the cases of enforced disappearances. So they are also capable enough to, investigate and prosecute the cases of enforced disappearances. From the Commission, we are committed to take all the cases. We are committed to ensure providing justice with the help of the international tribunals. The government at the moment are positive in a sense that they are providing technical assistance, secretarial assistance to the Commission. Still, we are facing different challenges by different stakeholders, particularly from the security forces and the armed forces, which were notoriously involved in disappearing people, torturing people in their custodies. And there are a lot of victims who are still missing. We couldn't find them. One of the things that the committee and the special procedure could think about how to support the Commission and other national institutions which are engaged with the finding of the victims of enforced disappearances. For example, providing forensic support, also the technical support that can be arranged with the help of different stakeholders in countries who have expertise on forensic anthropology and the capacity to sampling DNA and others, because at the moment the Commission doesn't have that capacity. Yeah, so I thank you very much. If the committee works together with other special procedure mandate holders, that could bring changes and ensure justice, reparation, and guarantee of non-repetition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'm now handing off the ceremony to Saad. There you go. And I will move on with the microphone.
Thank you very much, Grażyna, for very much excellent performance. Yes. We will go on to introduce the last three actions.
Hello.
Yeah. Good afternoon again. We will go on to introduce the last three actions, starting with the fourth action, which is focused on promotion of the ratification of the convention. Our first speaker will be Mary Elians Diaz from Asia ICAED. So please welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. His Excellencies, families of the disappeared, ladies and gentlemen, the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance is a global response to the global phenomenon of enforced disappearances. Reports of the Working Group on Enforced Disappearances attest to the global magnitude of the crime. Any international human rights treaty is valued for its pro-victims content. After all, the very reason for drafting such a treaty is to make states accountable for human rights violations. By dint of the active role of victims' families played during the 3-year drafting and negotiation process of this Convention on Enforced Disappearances, and the supportive position of the late French Ambassador Bernard Kessejan, the Convention has strong pro-victims position, pro-victims provisions. To recall, in the final session of the Convention, His Excellency Kessejan dedicated the final text of the Convention to the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, Línea Fundadora, represented then by the late Marta Ocampo de Vázquez. The Convention is important as enforced disappearance occurred in Latin America in the 70s and spread throughout the world. It has established a new right, which is the right not to be subjected to enforced disappearance. It contains articles specific to children victimized by enforced disappearance because of their parents being disappeared and/or born in captivity while their mothers were disappeared and these children disappeared themselves. It is an instrument of prevention of endless sufferings and devastation of the family, community, and the whole society. The Convention allows judgment against a perpetrator in another country if both countries involved are states parties. It is a source of empowerment for families because of the existence of an international norm that protects them in the process of searching for truth and justice. The signature and ratification of the Convention help erase the stigmatization against victims and is a form of re-dignification. The campaign for the Convention should be done in a massive manner by families of the disappeared and all members of civil society as a way of empowering them and facilitating the regaining control of their lives. To synthesize what many Asian families of the disappeared said, the Convention is a valuable instrument for the following reasons. Its pro-victims provisions are many. It is a form of pressure to the government not to repeat the same crime, and a way of amending domestic laws for harmonization purposes. It is a treaty creating legal obligations for states parties and giving monitoring functions to a new body composed of independent experts. The qualitative steps include a conventional basis according to the law of treaties, legal obligations of substantial nature, strong definition of enforced disappearance as an autonomous crime, and emphasis on the fight against impunity. The Convention also has a lot of legal value. It is a legally binding normative instrument, provisions of which parties are obliged to respect, promote, and implement. Lamentably, as of today, only 77 states have ratified the convention. The number pales in comparison with the number of states with outstanding cases of disappearances due to many impediments, including issues of sovereignty, non-intervention and self-determination, fear of international scrutiny, fear of deprivation of support from donor states which are against the convention, internal limitations of civil society organizations. So let us not let these impediments be stumbling blocks to the dream of the families to make enforced disappearance disappear from the face of the earth. Let us work hard for universal implementation of the convention. So the universal ratification and implementation of the convention is a fitting tribute to all those who disappeared and all those whose memory shall never be forgotten and never again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Luna. Please welcome on stage the second speaker, the representative of Morocco, Ms. Fatima Barakan, Secretary General of the International Delegation for Human Rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, au terme de ces 2 jours de travaux,
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, after these 2 days of work, we've had the occasion of entering into fruitful debates about the different aspects related to enforced disappearances. These exchanges have been enriched by the diversity of interventions of representatives of the states, institutions, human rights organizations, members of civil society, national, international, victims associations, their families. However, this first World Congress is just one first step towards the full eradication of enforced disappearances. This target we all aspire to, and this target can only be reached with the universal ratification of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons against enforced disappearances, as well as the effective application of its dispositions. I am positive that the initiative for the promotion of the convention that Morocco is part of and all the involved parties, I'm sure all efforts will be made to advance towards this target. Along these lines, the Kingdom of Morocco has committed to maintaining its efforts and keeping enforced disappearance within our legal code. The Kingdom of Morocco has also committed to organizing a seminar on enforced disappearance to exchange good practices and to act along the lines of the convention. The convention offers a very important legal framework that we have to make use of with an open and constructive dialogue and a combination of the efforts of all parties. The universal ratification and the optimal application of the convention is something that we all aspire to, and it will be the accumulated result of the ratification of the convention by all member states. And all of this will lead to an important milestone. It will also allow for good practices to multiply and for informed decisions to be made based on lived experiences in a joint context. And we should also specify that in Morocco, there are 2 regions that are more prone for the ratification efforts. The MENA region is amongst the 3 regions with the lowest amount of ratifications. So Morocco estimates that we need to reinforce this dialogue. And Morocco could share its experience as one of the first signatories and maintain this interaction with the Committee for enforced disappearances. The report ensuing from that regional seminar will be made available to all parties for the ratification of the convention. As coordinators of the worldwide network of the reporting mechanisms of human rights, Morocco will be able to share the results of its seminar in the network and make its experience available to the other members so that they can duplicate it. To finish, I will talk about the dynamic of the past today to translate into greater developments in favor of human dignity. Thank you very much.
Now we move on action 5, which focuses in strengthening the capacity of civil society to engage with UN mechanisms. I will call on stage the first speaker will be Mr. Joseph Monaka from Africa.
Thank you.
Oh. You come from?
I don't know whether this mic.
You can use this.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Kariuki. I work with the International Justice Mission, a global organization that is dedicated to protecting the poor from violence, bringing criminals to justice, and restoring survivors of violence. I joined the International Justice Mission 7 years ago during a tragic period when we faced the enforced disappearance of one of our lawyers, Willie Kimani, our client Josephat and Joseph. They were abducted while leaving court, and for 7 days we looked for them, we could not find them. Unfortunately, 7 days later, their tortured bodies were found in a river. This devastating incident catalyzed the formation of the Missing Voices Coalition, which I'm part of, which is an coalition that brings together 15 organizations and community justice center. Together, we document cases of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, advocating that Kenya ratify the Convention on Enforced Disappearances by collecting signatures online. So far, we've collected 5,000 signatures to force Kenya to sign this convention, training on trauma-informed care and interviewing skills. Enforced disappearances in Kenya has kind of spiked in the last 6 months, with the government Kenya National Commission of Human Rights saying that 80 Kenyans have disappeared during the Gen Z's protests that happened in June alone. 30 of these are still missing. Missing Voices Coalition that I am part of has also documented over 164 cases of enforced disappearance since it started forming. Despite the presence of these cases, many remain unreported to UN mechanisms due to inadequate documentation and capacity building. This is where we must act. Strengthening public narrative building can empower more journalists to recognize and accurately report these cases. We must focus on capacity building for documenting and verifying these cases, which is a very difficult thing, and we need the UN mechanism to support us in these reporting excesses and also supporting us in reporting these excesses to UN mechanism, because right now, all these cases, most of them have not been reported to the US mechanism. A significant challenge remains in the many unclaimed bodies that are disposed of by the government, which complicates efforts for documenting and tracing. Moreover, we need support to improve public interest litigation and push the government to ratify the convention. There exists a critical gap between the vital work conducted on the ground and the ability to report these incidences to international bodies due to lack of capacity in evidence gathering, understanding the reporting pathways, and recognizing the roles and procedure of this mechanism. Finally, it is essential to invest in building civil society capabilities through targeted training sessions and providing opportunity for activists to engage directly in international mechanisms like the one we are here in Geneva. Together, we can enhance our advocacy efforts and ensure that the voices of the disappeared are heard and acted upon at the international level. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Our second speaker will be Ms. Ana Lorena from UN WIGAD.
Thank you very much. I was working for 20 years, close to 20 years with families of disappeared relatives. And what I need to say regarding the strengthening of the civil society organizations is that the most valuable thing is what you already have. The most valuable thing is you, mothers, wives, daughters, crossing frontiers and surmounting all possible obstacles to find your loved ones. The biggest challenge was posed by mothers. If we had studied law, we needed to deconstruct that law to try and understand it from the standpoint of the needs of the families. For mothers, there was always no limit. They would always ask for more and more. And that was a great boost. That's when we came to realize, when I started working with the cases of disappeared migrants, that it was not enough to push things on a national scale, but that we needed to strike an alliance at the region. Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, reaching out to the United States. We learned this from the mothers that would cross the frontiers, walking, looking for their loved ones. We also learned that the United Nations existed, that they do exist, and we saw it too far away, and we were like, how can we make it until we reach the United Nations? And we would see it like out there. And we said, well, at least we need to bombard them. We need to bomb them, but in the good sense of the word. I'm from Mexico, so every time a reporter would arrive or any international mechanism would arrive from the United Nations, we prepared a report, but we only worked with disappeared migrants. And you might say, why were you given so many reports? Well, because we came to realize that disappearance is linked to discrimination, that there's children, there's women, that it has to do with the independent judiciary system, with the prosecutor's offices failing to investigate, with the rapporteur of migrants. It has to do with almost all mechanisms of the United Nations. So each mechanism of the United Nations had a report from our own. I think I have run out of time. And allow me to tell you that it's of the utmost importance to continue doing what you're doing. You already are walking the path. What I would expect from this meeting is to bring us closer between you and myself, as someone who is working at the task force and working group of the United Nations. If you need us, we're there. If you have doubts, please come over. If you want a workshop, we can conduct it. A large part of the reports that we draft, the reports that we're drafting, for example, I'm doing one on the enforced disappearance. Those reports are going to be nourished by your input, by your voices, and you can be a part of all of this. I encourage you to continue to collaborate. I encourage you to tell us what we can do better. Fortunately, right now, the fact that we can have remote communication brings us closer. We're concerned about the countries where we don't have too many reports of cases, nor reports of a situation, because in that case, we cannot talk to the states. But there you can help. Sorry, but the sound is cutting off. And I would like to tell you that I hope that this forum, that this gathering we have held, is one more seed that can grow in the city, sharing that with other colleagues who could not attend, a seed that can flourish in your country, in your region, and I hope that we can see each other here again. And I hope that this is going to be a call upon the rest of the country so that together we can find the rest of the disappeared people.
Thank you very much, Anna. We reach now action 6 in our agenda, and the first two speakers, first I need to mention the building an international youth network against enforced disappearance. So may I call on stage Mr. Chrysostom and Aisha Masoud from Pakistan. You are welcome, please.
Bon après-midi tout le monde. Nous, on était un groupe de 26 jeunes.
Good afternoon. We had a group of 26 youth representatives.
Nous étions un groupe.
There were 26 young representatives from different countries and different regions, and we have been working on this point in order to build an international youth network against enforced disappearances. We have reached 3 conclusions I'm going to talk about. The academic point. And we have seen that there is a lack of training regarding the enforced disappearances among the youth. And we have established the following points. Firstly, we need to ask universities to include this matter of enforced disappearances in their university degrees like medicine, anthropology, law, so that youngsters can become acquainted with this really unknown phenomenon for our generation. And we need to institutionalize collaboration with the universities in order to share experiences and knowledge. In order to disseminate this phenomenon at all countries at the same level, at the same degree of knowledge, so that the youngsters can acquire this knowledge at the same level. We also need to do advocacy so that the universities from all around the world can guarantee the principles and the rights and goals that you have articulated here, so that all the young people can follow this fight, and so that there is knowledge transfer that allows for that to happen.
I'm representing my country as a victim and a human rights defender. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers and participants of the First World Congress. I hope we can together achieve for a world against enforced disappearances and an end to this crime. Young people are the agents of change. Let us clarify that. I quote the extraordinary example of Bangladesh. Last year, we saw change from our own eyes. We saw people that were young, united and powerful. They could achieve everything in the world. We need second-liners to carry the flame of enforced disappearances, the fight against enforced disappearances, and that's why young people are so important at the cause of this. We come to a conclusion of actionable items that we can do to achieve this network of youth against enforced disappearances. Number 1 action item is to establish a digital advocacy campaign and awareness platform. It can be a digital platform like a website, which will have a database of youth organizations, student unions, organizations working against enforced disappearances in different regions. It will also give voice to the victims of enforced disappearances that are fighting the battle in their countries, in the form of publications, testimonies, and podcasts. They can do joint campaigns and commemorate and live the memory of their disappeared loved ones. The second actionable item that I would like to mention is to draft a global youth strategy for the fight against enforced disappearances with young people at the heart and core of the struggle, which can include trainings, awareness sessions, events, summer camps of young people that are fighting against enforced disappearances globally. These solidarity events can also include mentoring sessions. Also, would like to suggest that there should be an intergenerational dialogue in the next Second World Congress against enforced disappearances. Young voices are at the center of change, and they should be also involved in the decision-making processes. So we request that this strategy would also include the voices of young people across the globe at the decision-making level.
Quiero aprovechar estos 4 minutos para inspirar a esta pareja de jóvenes a la acción, pero a la acción de formación, organización y capacitación para retomar la bandera de la búsqueda de verdad, de la búsqueda de justicia.
I would like to make the most of these 4 minutes that have been allocated to me to inspire this young couple and to steer them towards action, but the action of training, organization, and capacity building, so that they can resume and so that they can take on the flag of the quest for truth, the search for justice regarding enforced disappearances. It's inspiring to see them. And I can put it as clearly as this because we at FADE in Honduras, Bertoliva in Honduras, our strength lies in the organized youth. We have been working on a national level in the building of networks of human rights defenders and the building of young ambassadors of our memory, because we are aware and we are certain that the path to be followed is that well, we need to place a bet on generation handover because we are facing the end of our lives. And in Honduras, we have initiated working with these two networks, and it's not a matter of thinking about that and sending this information via WhatsApp. No, it's all about training them, build their capacity so that they acquire the awareness on how important memory is. What happens to the relatives of the missing persons? How do we get to live through this scenario? Hours become weeks. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And that's how time passes by, and over time, life passes by. But one of our important points where we can say mission accomplished is to give life to the disappeared and to the arrested people. How have we achieved that after 43 years worth of struggle? Well, we have achieved that through the memory and through the fight and the exercise against oblivion, because we don't feel ashamed that youngsters need to take on the baton. I know that here we have the Minister for Human Rights in our country. I know that the ambassador is also present, the ambassador accredited here, in Switzerland from our country. These are two young people who have the commitment and who understand the path in the quest for truth and justice. Going to wrap up in a minute. And to that end, we have been working, and we would like to share it with the community so that we can build an action network in order to achieve more advocacy for the law of the compliance of the international obligations of human rights for the victims of the enforced disappearances between 1980 until 1993, because this cannot stay in the past. The past needs to be brought to the present, and that's the only way in which we can build a future. I hope you stay healthy. Thank you very much for the space, and thank you for giving more life to our fight against oblivion. Thank you.
Let me now invite the representative of France, Ambassador Selena Granted, Director of Global Affairs of French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, membres de la société civile, familles.
Excellencies, dear colleagues and relatives of the disappeared, university experts, I feel honored to intervene at the closing of this First World Congress on Enforced Disappearances, and especially I feel humbled to have intervened after your testimony as a victim and relative of the disappeared. On behalf of France, I would like to reinforce my gratitude to the organizers of this First World Congress on Enforced Disappearances, and especially the initiative for the elimination of enforced disappearances. I think that this Congress is of the utmost importance in the fight against this crime, which constitutes one of the most severe human rights violations. To quote Nelson Mandela, the fight against impunity is essential in order to guarantee human rights and the dignity of all individuals. Without justice, there can be no lasting peace. And I think that this Congress participates in the fight against the impunity addressed by Mandela. As co-organizers of this event, France strengthens their relentless commitment in order to achieve justice, truth, and reparations for the relatives of the victims. Enforced disappearances are not only a crime against individuals, but they pose an attack on human dignity. These attacks cannot receive impunity. They require an adequate response relying on human rights. I have had the honor of working in Damascus prior to the attack to this beautiful country. And in that sense, I would like to highlight the testimony of Taher Jizazi, who, in the framework of the María initiative, a French program that had the goal of welcoming human rights defenders from all around the world, says, well, I had the opportunity to listen to them at the International Human Rights Workshop on the 10th of December last year in Paris. And Taher, for more than 14 years, is documenting the atrocities committed by the regime in Syria. He has devoted his life to the fight against impunity in Syria, making efforts in order to let voice to the victims who still, as of today, are searching for the truth. And this fight is not just restricted to Syria, but Syria is a country that I cherish and that I know pretty well. We cannot forget the lives of the women, lives destroyed by Daesh. France was one of the first countries to support Dr. Nassam Habbar, gynecologist and director of Hope Years for Women, and the fund that was built around Nadia and Dr. Mouad. Nobel Prize in France is going to continue to lend support to the victims of sexual violence, among others, in the Democratic Republic of Congo or Central African Republic. Evidently, there's many places where these crimes are being committed and to fight in all fronts. civil society, it's essential to document these disappearances and work with the associations of victims and human rights defenders who, with their dedication, lent a voice to the disappeared. Our discussions have highlighted the need to strengthen the coordination among all stakeholders in all the regions of the world, particularly in Africa, where forced disappearances are underdocumented. It's urgent to support the structuring of local associations in a regional framework that is capable of giving a voice to the victims, and France would like to contribute to the effort of structuring this network in Africa. And we also need to count on the youth. We have seen it. The youth is essential to dynamize the collective efforts and especially to guarantee the long-lasting impact. And we're going to create this International Youth Network Against Enforced Disappearances. It's going to offer a platform that fosters dialogue and promotes innovative initiatives. Our French cultural institutes or diplomats are going to play an important role in the awareness-raising campaigns. We're going to hold events on enforced disappearances. We have done it in the past, but we're going to continue to do it in Colombia, Iraq, Cote d'Ivoire, or Bangladesh, among others. In the framework of the International Day of Enforced Disappearances, 30th of August, or the International Day for the Right for Truth, the 24th of March. And by doing that, we want to achieve a wider scope and outreach. This is a call for action, and it's a unique opportunity to send a clear signal of our common determination to put a stopper to this global crime. Thank you all for your participation, for your commitment, which are essential so that we can be successful collectively. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Before I call Mr. Emmanuel Digo, I would like to name all the 6 actions. First, the first one, support the creation of a regional victim-led network in sub-Saharan Africa. Organization of an annual meetings of women searchers. Monitoring of CED session. Promotion of the ratification of the convention. Strengthening the capacity of civil society organizations to engage with the UN mechanism. Building an international youth network against the enforced disappearances. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Emmanuel Digo before our goodbye coffee. Thank you very much.
Merci. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je vais commencer par le plus facile et le plus agréable, c'est-à-dire de remercier
the words of appreciation to all participants and to everyone who has contributed to the success of this meeting. Before, Claire presented her team, but she didn't introduce herself. And I think we should thank her. From the beginning, she's been instrumental to the organization of the conference, the Congress. And I'd also like to add that we have not mentioned María, the treasurer of this initiative, who has also made very active contributions even in the past few hours to the success of this Congress.
Another big
thanks, words of appreciation for the interpreters. Without them, we would be like the Tower of Babel, and we would not be able to understand each other. Although there's a lot of communication that takes place through emotions. Thank you very much. And I'll say quickly, so as not to forget, some participants would like to take a family photo in the hall before closing the Congress. So if you want, afterwards, we can meet at the hall to take this picture together. It will be wonderful. And I think the first success is just for this Congress to exist. We've dreamed about it for a long time. question. In the 70s, when the Subcommittee for Human Rights started to tackle enforced disappearances with the Condor Plan, he already wanted to organize a World Congress on Enforced Disappearances. So we've managed to do it now, today. We've gathered so many people with so many brave and important testimonials from every corner of the world. I think we've had very intense and rich participation, and this is a success in and of itself. We've conveyed very powerful messages. We have established or re-established contact, because due to a lack of means, many work on an isolated manner. So gathering everyone together to work for a couple of days is already a success. We've also formalized commitments, important commitments, not just promises, but also commitments. And we have to follow these commitments up closely so that these promises do not go unfulfilled. I hope there will be a second Congress, as some have formulated. We all hope to have a second Congress. I don't know when, but I think we should start mobilizing already so that the intensity of our changes will continue. I hope we will have a website or digital means to be able to continue sharing information and to continue to contribute to enriching and furthering our cause, our shared task. At any rate, this joint mobilization should endure. And I would like to again mention some ideas that I mentioned at the opening. I talked about continuity, commitment, effort. María Bacasso earlier, Ambassador Bernard who chaired the task force on negotiations with a decisive role. And yesterday, Isabel mentioned Louis Janet, who is an example to all of us. I think these names are present in our hearts. And there's also continuity of the dramas and the tragedies. We've seen that the past isn't in the past. It weighs heavy in the present in all possible forms. And the Committee of Enforced Disappearances, despite having competencies only since it's coming into force, has taken note of things that happened in the past, the consequences of which weigh heavy in our hearts. And in the law, we talk about crimes with no statute of limitations. And here we've seen that victims are international. This morning, we've had a very important panel on children who are victims of enforced disappearances. And the task force here has made general observations about this problem and about the different generations. I think it's very good to count on this youth network to continue with this intergenerational dynamic. And beyond that, societies, communities are the ones who are also very important. And I'm going back to Louis justice and fight against impunity, the right to justice, the right to the truth, the right to reparation and non-repetition. These are not empty words. And what's important too is that on the basis of these principles in the United Nations, we have a mandate of the special rapporteur. It's a shame that Sabiani, who had this mandate, Bernard Juan, he is a former president, rapporteur of the task force on enforced disappearances, have not been able to make it. But there's a synergy. There's a synergy between their work and the work of the Enforced Disappearances Committee. And I also talked about the need for a consistency, and I think we've mentioned this a while ago. The regional groups back in the day wanted specific instruments, and that's very good. It's very good that the Inter-American continent has held its own convention, which is a
d'avoir une convention régionale, ce qui, à mon avis,
Europeans in
était une
2010
mauvaise idée. Et
attempted
je
to have
pense
a
qu'ils
regional
n'auraient pas été plus
convention,
loin que le
which was
modèle
a poor idea in
universel.
my
Dès le
opinion.
début,
I don't
notre
think
comité
it would
a
have
été
made
très
it
vigilant
farther
sur
than the
ce point.
universal
Et je
model.
suis très heureux que
And
les
from the
dernières
beginning, our
résolutions de
committee paid
l'Assemblée
close
parlementaire
attention
du
to this,
Conseil de
and
l'Europe,
I'm
notamment celle qu'on a
happy
évoquée
to
hier sur le rapport d'André
see that the
Gattolin,
latest resolutions of the Council
marqué
of
le
Europe
soutien
on
ferme,
the
complet,
report by
sans
Olivier
réserve
had indicated
des États membres du Conseil de
the
l'Europe
strong and unreserved
sur
support of the
cette
member states of the Council of
universalité
Europe
de la Convention. Et je suis très heureux aussi que
vis-à-vis
le
this
commissaire Sceaux
universality of the convention. I'm
nous ait dit
very
aujourd'hui
happy also
que
that
dans le système africain, là aussi,
Commissioner
la
also said
référence
today that in
universelle
the
de la
African
Convention
system,
internationale est fondamentale. Donc je crois que
universal reference of the convention is
l'universalité et
essential
la
as well.
subsidiarité sont très bien articulées
So
sur ce
I
terrain.
think
De
that
même, il y a une complémentarité très forte entre le
this has been
comité
very well
des disparitions
articulated, and
forcées
there's
et le groupe de
also
travail
great
sur les disparitions
complementarity
forcées ou
between
involontaires.
the
Dès
Committee
le
of
départ,
Enforced
nous avons dit
Disappearances and
qu'il
the
n'y a pas
Task
10
Force
experts d'un côté et
of
5 de l'autre, qu'on
Enforced
était
and
15
Involuntary
experts
Disappearances.
à travailler dans
They
le même
said
sens. Ensuite, il faut le
that
mettre en œuvre concrètement
there are
avec
experts
des
on both
contacts, des
sides
échanges et
working
le fait qu'il
the same intention,
y ait des réflexions communes,
and
que
now
sur
we
des
need
observations générales ou des
to
déclarations substantielles, il y a un travail commun. C'est
go
quelque
to a
chose de
more specific
fondamental. Le
level.
groupe de travail avait
The
fait
fact that there are joint
un grand
declarations
séminaire il y
or
a quelques
joint
années au
work
Maroc
is
sur la
fundamental. The
question
task
des
force
acteurs non étatiques.
conducted a wonderful
L'article
seminar a few
3
years
de la
ago
Convention,
on the
je crois qu'il
matter
faudrait
of
que cette clarification soit
non-state
prolongée et qu'on
actors.
sache
Article
comment
3 of the convention.
l'implication
I
des acteurs non
think we would
étatiques
also need to
dans le crime
clarify
de
this
disparition
point
forcée
to see
peut être pris en
how
compte. Et je crois que sur ce
non-state
terrain, il faut que le comité
actors
et le groupe de
in
travail,
enforced
évidemment,
disappearance
aient
crimes can be taken
un
into
même
account, and in
discours
this
et une
sense, the
même
committee and
vision.
the task force. But it is normal that they
J'ajoute que
have the same narrative and the same
il y
vision.
a aussi une spécificité de la Convention sur les disparitions forcées qui, on l'oublie
But I
souvent,
will
est une
add
grande
that
avancée dans
there's
le droit
a
international
specificity
positif.
of the
Et
convention,
il
which
faut
is
être très
a great
vigilant pour
step
que
forward
des
in
réformes,
international
des
law.
codifications, y
And we
compris
need
celles mises en œuvre par la Commission du droit
to
international et
ensure
prolongées par la 6e
that the
Commission des
reforms
Nations
of the law,
Unies,
even the ones
ne marquent
started
pas des
by
reculs
the
et des
Committee of
régressions.
the International Committee
Et
of
sur
Human
ce
Rights,
point, il y a
are
des
not
garde-fous, ne serait-ce que l'article 32 de la Convention,
a
mais il faut faire
backslide.
très
And in
attention
this sense, we have
que
some safeguards,
les
such as Article 3 of the
observations générales du
Convention,
comité et celles du groupe de
but
travail soient
we
prises en
need
compte,
to
puisque
ensure
c'est à
that the
ces
general
organes qu'il
observations of the
appartient
committee and
d'interpréter et
the task
d'appliquer
force
la
are taken into
Convention
account,
dans ses
because these
meilleurs
are the bodies
standards
in charge
garantis
of
par l'article
interpreting and
32. Je
applying
prendrai juste un
the
exemple qui est
convention
très
in the best
sensible,
way
très actuel,
possible, all of
c'est la
these
question de
guaranteed
la
by
justice
Article
militaire
32.
pour
I will take a
qui ne
very
peut
sensitive
pas
example. It's a matter
poursuivre les crimes
of
de
military
disparition forcée,
justice
qui sont des crimes affreux, des crimes de droit commun,
that
qui
cannot
n'entrent pas dans la fonction
prosecute
militaire. C'est
the
quelque chose
crimes
que
of enforced disappearances. They are
le système
atrocious
latino-américain dit
crimes.
très clairement,
And
que
the
le
system,
comité
the Latin American
a
system,
dit également
determined
très
this
clairement
very
dans une
clearly.
déclaration.
So it's
Pour
something that the
finir,
committee set
je crois
in a
que
statement,
le rôle
in a
du comité a été
declaration.
souligné très bien par
To
Barbara
finish, I
Lochbihler
think that the
tout à
role of the
l'heure. Il y a un
committee,
point que par pudeur, les membres du comité
underlined
ne disent pas,
by
ni leur
Lochbihler
secrétariat,
before,
c'est qu'on se félicite
there's
que,
something
au
that
départ,
has been said, hasn't been
20
said.
ratifications pour
And it
l'entrée
is
en
that we
vigueur
congratulate
en
ourselves
2011, je crois, et puis
because
aujourd'hui
the
77
ratification
ratifications. Mais ce qu'il faut savoir, c'est que le
took place
comité,
in the year
à l'origine,
2000,
se
and
réunissait
today
4
there are
semaines par
77
an, et c'est
ratifications.
seulement cette année que
And
le
what we must
comité
know
va
is
pouvoir
that the
se réunir
committee,
5
at
semaines.
its
Donc, pour
inception,
faire le monitoring
met
de
4
77 États membres,
weeks
c'est
per
très
year,
peu,
and now it will
d'autant
be
plus que
5
c'est un
weeks
travail
per
de
year.
toute l'année, avec les
For
appels
the
urgents
follow-up
qui
of
doivent être traités en
77
temps
countries,
réel,
it's a
si
very
on
short
veut que ça
time.
soit un vrai habeas
And
corpus
there are
international,
pressing matters that
sans
need to
parler
be
des
dealt
visites
with
sur
in
le
real
terrain qui
time
sont très
if
lourdes
we
à
want to
organiser
have an international habeas corpus without mentioning matters on site that are difficult to organize, missions on site that are difficult to organize. So we need to offer the means so that the committee will work in an independent and effective manner. One last point that I would like to stress: the committee, as well as the other bodies of the treaty, has concerned itself with the matter of reprisals and the intimidation of people who work at the committee are sometimes persons
that are followed when they walk down the corridors of the United Nations. They act in emergency situations, they search for disappeared persons, and in this sense, the committee at large has adopted a series of principles in San Jose de Costa Rica about the prevention and the fight against reprisals and intimidation. Every committee, such as the Enforced Disappearances Committee, together with the help of Special Rapporteur, watches over this point, and I know that on several occasions, we've taken into account the risks taken on by those who defend human rights. This is something obvious for us, and we take it into account. And obviously, mechanisms of the United Nations should be a protection and not an indifferent bureaucratic administrative system. We're all aware of that. And beyond what the committees, the bodies of the United Nations can do in a specific and restrictive legal framework, we also have what the civil society can do. And another important lesson of the meeting is that the exchanges of good practices, setting up networks, such as FEDEFAM, or the new African network that has been created, all of that is essential. And in that sense, ICAED has led the way with example with the two presidents of ICAED who are present here in the room to show the leadership of the institution. We represent a collective force with a great creative energy. These 2 days are proof of that. We have a solid foundation. We have a modern treaty, which was very complex. It had potential, but it had not been used thoroughly. It had been co-built by diplomats, activists, independent experts. And I think it gives us a good result and a pricing. It is a baseline treaty with a universal vocation. It's not only about exaggerating the numbers. All countries need to feel involved. There are important legal mechanisms, prevention mechanisms, solidarity mechanisms, and it affects us all. It's our human condition, it's our humanity what is at stake. Thank you very much, and I wish you very fruitful work, and I wish we will see each other soon.